Welcome to Deges Dragons.
I thought this was going to be hard, but...
Welcome to Deges Dragons.
Who wants some of the Ripper?
They're state champs, baby. Woo!
He's completely captain. I'm a man of the people.
Shattered world.
Ripper knows. Ripper always knows.
And welcome to another episode of the Degecast, the supplemental podcast for our YouTube show, Deges and Dragons. I'm your host, Nate Lindberg, and you can find me all over social media at Nate Lindberg. And you can follow our brand on Facebook, Twitter, and most importantly, YouTube at Degetime. That's Degetime. Do you want to be part of this show? Hey, you can be. Please do. Join us. Email us at degetime@gmail.com or leave a message for us at the Degetime voicemail at 617-506-9686, and we'll answer your questions, read your comments right here next week. Now, they say that everyone loves a slinky, but if there's one curmudgeon that couldn't stand them, it would probably be our veteran RPG player, a game master in his own right, and permanent member of our player panel, Tony Shermuxness. Tony, what's up?
They just, like, every single one I ever owned somehow got tangled up. Like, even if I didn't even touch them, they would just somehow tangle. I just never understood it.
I knew it. If there was one person, it would be him. It would be him. Yep. All right. And he is our veteran game master, resident therapy expert, and a man whose Tamagotchis only died once their batteries finally did. Conrad Audette.
What up?
You know,
Mr. Tamagotchi.
Mr. Tamagotchi to you, man. You know, I had these.
More of a Digimon guy. But...
I was gonna say I had the Digimon because you could like link them together and stuff,
Yeah.
and fight, and you know. But hey, those are all
actually
those.
survive without constant monitoring.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Do you remember, like, I think it was in 4th grade, like everybody having them in their desks and you just constantly beep 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 beep.
Yeah, it was so
Oh my
bad.
god.
They were outlawed in my
So bad.
school.
Eventually
Like,
they
after
were
the
too.
first
Oh
month.
yeah, they were outlawed quickly.
Very quickly. Very, very, very quickly. So yeah. Now here's the thing. I didn't script anything whatsoever beyond this point. So Conrad, help me. Help me. What do we do now?
All right, so this episode I think is a great opportunity. We've spoken a lot about theory, so I think for this one we're going to talk a little bit more about hands-on practice and what that might look like. So basically, you know, like, what's group therapy? And it's different from self-help and support groups. I want to make that distinction because neither of those necessitate a qualified therapist. So in a support group, like a collection of people with a similar experience will gather to show that, you know, they're not alone, probably talk about what's difficult about whatever experience they share. But with a counselor, you'll receive evidence-based guidance as well as coping strategies. A therapist will act as a facilitator while making sure the group is process-oriented. And that would mean engaging the participants in discussion and activities. So you can really see in this episode how Clink is perfect as a collaborative activity for creating a sense of belonging, confidence, and creativity. So we have our first few flashbacks that come into play in this episode. So starting right from the beginning with Kenta, who is Nate, we see how I introduced the opportunity to create a flashback. You know, like we're talking about the hot buns and whatnot, and I'm just like, oh, I mean, we could, you know, insert a flashback here. So say this is my therapy group. I wouldn't want to be the center of attention. So Nate could have said no, and we would have just progressed, you know, that's totally fine. But he did want to try it. So he gives his description about his grandmother making the best hot buns, and she passed away. So then another member of the group is charged with asking a question about this as part of the game mechanics. And this is the next level of interaction. So this is part of perspective building. And so we have Suru, who's Tim. He asks why these buns are so special, which to Nate probably seemed really obvious. Like, hey, I like my grandmother. Why wouldn't I want to be reminded of her?
I even responded that way too. Like when Tim asked, or when Suru asked, I looked because like that. My grandmother made great hot buns. Like
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like, it was just
exactly.
even the tone of voice that I had. Like that was something that actually jumped out to me in particular was my tone of voice. I was like, wow, Nate, you
abnormally rude person.
You were like coming through the character, you
Right.
know, like with your experience, it's like, yeah, like obviously, you know, I like my grandmother. And that's just simply not, you know, necessarily the case with other people. So, you know, there may be no relationship whatsoever with grandparents, or there's a negative relationship with grandparents. So Nate responds with, you know, because they remind me of my grandmother and simpler times. So now that second piece adds layers too. So why are simpler times nice? Kenta is a traveling sumo champion at the peak of his physical condition. Shouldn't now be the best time? So I ask myself, is that something that's part of Nate's character, or did something go on with Nate as a person just manifest into the game? So you can see like how as a counselor, you know, there are these like little things that we look at and we hear, and so you know, obviously we play through the game and keep on going there, and I don't stop and be like, so Nate, you know, what's going on with simpler times? but
right.
uh,
But it's at least something that you make a mental note of, or
right,
hopefully
yeah,
a physical note of.
yeah, both, and also too, there, at least like I know like with the Bodana group, they have two counselors present for the game. So like where like one person is really like facilitating the game moving forward, there's a second therapist present who would be like making those notes and possibly interjecting like if it seemed appropriate, so that you don't miss these things.
And Jack may have touched on this, I don't remember, but would that second therapist obviously kind of be there too in case something did get a little bit too intense for one of the kids that were playing along? They could at least kind of
Oh yeah, like an individual group member is like
right.
needs to be excused. Yeah, that as well. It's another
Okay.
like protection for the people who are participating. So when using this game as a tool, that's a thread we could pull right now, you know, or afterward, which in this case it's afterward. So from there, I'm thinking, well, his grandmother is important, right? So what benefit do I bestow as part of this flashback mechanically for the game? And interacting with older women, which you could see like Tony was on the same page as me there. We're like, yeah, like old ladies, like he's going to do well with old ladies now based on this flashback.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then I also added smelling buns as like, you know, as like a comedic thing because, hey, comedy has a place for uplifting people. But what's really, really cool, though, is Tim has already lashed on to Nate's character and he wants to know more. So he actually stops, you know, this train right here and he says, or he asks, was this before your sumo training? You know, like, so we can see right there, like, that in itself is the power of this activity. Icebreakers are essential for group therapy because many people won't simply begin divulging their deepest feelings from the beginning. So now Tim's question creates this epiphany that eating so many hot buns was the foundation for building sumo mass. And now the importance of his grandmother elevates further because she was fundamental in shaping his entire career path. So now 3 players have helped create this really cool part of Kenta's past. And there's this superior understanding of each other because, well, they made it together. Another important factor here is trust. It's vital that group participants are able to trust each other. So Nate has given up like a certain level of control over the character he's role-playing by creating this flashback with other people. So, I mean, he has the ultimate say, of course, which I think looking at Nate's second flashback about fighting bears, you can see him assuming control of his character. But also, that is another example of perspective building. So when he's asked why he doesn't train with superior sumo, Nate's response is because there aren't any around. So now Tony and Billy both interpret this to mean I'm already superior, You hear them say, such arrogance, and like chuckling to themselves. But then Nate goes on to clarify what he means, which is more along the lines of other sumo wrestlers were rare, period. So, I don't think there's anything profound we're uncovering here, but it's a great representation of how people will interpret the same words and experiences differently. So while Kenta was viewed momentarily as arrogant, the real descriptor is determined. He wants to become a sumo wrestler so badly now that he's willing to fight bears to better himself. So this is why dialogue is so important and why it's effective in group and why group therapy is effective. So again, assuming I'm a counselor here, I didn't say anything beyond repeating what group members said, like a facilitator. And then Nate explains what he really meant. There was no need for me to interject and be like, well, hey guys, like, you're giving Nate the raw deal. That was an organic thing where, Nate responded with, what he truly meant. And now the group members have this fresh understanding and they're learning from each other and about each other. That's kind of my segment on group therapy. I don't know if either of you had any comments to add or any questions about what I just went over.
I did not.
I'm so eloquent.
Right? No, I mean, I like everything you said certainly makes sense. Because like
Definitely hit the mark for sure.
yeah, like especially too, like with what you're talking about, with people kind of misinterpreting certain things. Like, I feel like in today's day and age, especially, we see that a lot through like text messaging and just things along those lines. Like, I couldn't tell you how many times like there's been like a fight that started either between my wife and I or somebody else that I've known because like somebody misinterpreted a text and they thought there was like a negative tone to something where no, like when I'm writing it, like in my head, I'm as happy as can be, and then I'm like, well, wait a minute, whoa, hold on, what's going on? Why am I now in a fight with somebody? So I certainly understand that, and it makes sense, especially like in a group setting where if somebody does misinterpret something or misunderstand something, whether it be the person themselves that actually said it, like in this case, it was me that corrected Tony and Billy, but or it could be potentially the rest of the group or somebody else in the group that makes that correction or something, but certainly help to kind of clarify what what was actually meant in the first place. So yeah, no, that definitely all makes sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Excellent. So the other thing that I wanted to touch on as it came up in this episode is seppuku. So just because for those who are unfamiliar,
yeah, a bit of a heavy topic.
Like we all at the table like know what it is, but I'm sure that there are plenty of people out there who've maybe just never even heard of it, period, or just don't know what we're talking about. So, and I didn't dig too deep into it at the time because it's suicide and it's certainly a heavy topic. But here, let's at least discuss what it means to the Japanese historically. So it's sometimes referred to by Westerners, so you might have heard it this way, as harakiri, and that is just a very literal translation of belly cutting. But seppuku, the term, is the preferred name by the Japanese. So it is a ritual suicide where one disembowels themselves horizontally and then cuts upward to ensure that it's fatal. And the function of it was to maintain an honorable death on the battlefield for samurai warriors, avoid capture by enemies, and express grief over the death of a revered leader, which is the experience that Kodai had. Now, some prefer to die slowly, but often a second person was enlisted to remove the head with a quick strike. So this practice was actually introduced all the way back in the 12th century and remained in practice until the samurai diminished in the 19th century. And
Wow,
even then,
okay.
like it still occurred, but it like fell out of popularity. So it was hundreds of years that people practiced it. And, the connotation behind it is just so vastly different than our view of it in modern day, and like also in the West, where we historically have not had something like that. So that's what it is, and why we didn't stop for a sidebar on that and to talk about that. I even think even now we should postpone any suicide talk for another time. But definitely wanted to clarify what was happening there and the experience of Kodai.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so obviously, everybody in the room knew what we were talking about at the time, but yeah, just kind of touch on it real quick and then move on. We can always talk about that another day.
Right, and also again, like we talked about it last week about like doing research for Japanese culture and everything. So this was like a very like reasonable like part of Kodai's backstory.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
for sure. Like he's an old samurai, and his
Ronin at that point.
Yeah, Ronin at that point where his lord had passed.
I don't know, what is the difference between samurai and Ronin?
So samurai are generally warriors under a banner, generally under a lord, where Ronin are just bannerless samurai. So they don't have a lord or anybody.
Okay.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Conrad.
No, yeah, that's correct. And also as a result of that are more likely to roam, where
hence why he wound up with a sumo wrestler, a Spaniard, and a blacksmith.
Exactly. Because like I guess sort of get a little more Japanese history. Like the term Bushido is the warrior's way, the way of life. It really is. It's like an entire way of life that you've dedicated yourself to, and it's contingent on your lord. So it's like you've now completely lost your way of life. Like those same principles stand, but they're all directly tethered to the Lord you serve. So you essentially like have like those feelings of like, I have no reason to live anymore at this point. And that's where you'll get, I honorable death on the battlefield, or, that severe expression of grief in loss of that lord.
So now that does make sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me in a way, because I can't imagine being so devoted to a leader or something like that. But in terms of Japanese history and culture, and I mean in things that I've read personally and learned over the years, makes sense. Definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think that kind of covers the episode.
All right.
Anything else that you guys thought?
Yeah, prepare for shenanigans in the next episode.
Yes, shenanigans in the next episode, indeed. A little bit of spoilers, my God. Oh, I kind of went ahead and I just kind of briefly went through episode 3, and I was like, oh man, this episode.
That's the episode I'm thinking of, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
right.
it is.
Just what I haven't watched the 3rd episode yet, but I was pretty sure that's when that happened.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So before we go ahead and wrap up here today, I do want to mention that I actually am on this coming Wednesday, July 8th. I actually get the opportunity to present this podcast and present Deges Dragons in front of the company that I work for. And the CEO, she found out about what we do here on the Degecast and Deges Dragons, and was very intrigued, very interested, and actually personally asked me to speak in front of everybody in the company. It's about roughly just shy of 1,000 people. So no pressure whatsoever. But it's actually pretty cool. I'm going to get to actually explain what we do, what we stand for here on Dege, at Dege Time. So that's cool. So if any of you guys are listening to this particular podcast, hey, welcome. Hi. Glad you guys popped in and listened. Thank you. And I hope you stick around and continue on with what it is we do here, and enjoy, learn, and hopefully maybe one day let me know if you want to play a game. We'll let you come in and actually play a game with us at some point too. We'd like to bring a few extra people in, a few extra bodies that may have not played with us before, and play a game. If you've never played one before, that's even better. All right. Where's my wrap up? I didn't write one. Okay, that's why I don't have it. What?
No.
God, gentlemen. All right, and this has
been another episode of the
Oh, God damn it, you guys. This has been another
thank
episode.
you for turning into the...
Oh, you know what? This has been another episode of the Degecast. These guys want to do the sign-off instead of me today. They've cut me off more times than I can count. You know what? That's okay. That's okay, because it's okay. I've found therapy in RPG gaming. I don't know. That was really cheesy. Hey, guys, this is the end of our show. If you want to join us, you want to be part of this show, please do. Join us by sending us an email at degetime@gmail.com, or give us a voicemail, 617-506-9686, and we will respond during the next episode. You know what? You guys, I'm not even going to let you say goodbye this week, because screw that. So, oh, God, Tony got to do it. Tony got to do it. Conrad, you can... Quick, Conrad, go! I'm going to hit record. Stop. He's going to... Conrad doesn't get to say goodbye, so I'm going to say goodbye for him. Bye.
Let's go.